Andrew Malcolm has spent 26 years at the New York Times, working in New York, at the UN, and in Chicago, San Francisco, Tokyo, Vietnam, and Canada. He was the assistant national editor there and also the Our Towns columnist. He spent 8 years in government political communications and 5 years on the LA Times editorial board. Clearly one of the slackers in the room. He's a Pulitzer finalist from 2004, invented the top ticket blog 16 months ago, which is now ranked 56th, not 59th. He had to edit his own bio today because Technorati moved him up to 56. In his spare time, I don't know how, he's written 10 nonfiction books, 2 of which have been turned into movies, and he has 4 kids, and one of them's a webmaster. So, without further ado, I pass this on.
Thank you very much. I have to tell you how totally intimidating this is because standing in front of all these professionals and a rookie with my vast 498-day blogging career behind me. Some of you may have heard the biblical story about Moses going up the mountain with his meeting with God. And he came down and went to report to the tribe, and he said, I just got back from a meeting with God, and I have some good news. I got it down to 10. When the editor first approached me about developing a politics blog, I would have a partner in Washington who's Don Frederick, and it was pretty much open. He said, well, give us a memo. So I went online, and my son was very encouraging. He founded ChicagoSports.com and was the Emmy out here at FoxSports.com, and then started BigTenNetwork.com in Chicago back with Fox and the Big Ten a year ago. And I said, gee, what the hell am I going to write about? And 6 or 7 stories a day. And he said, don't worry, you'll have plenty to write about. And yesterday I started off with a list of 9, and I wrote 6, and I had 16 when I got done. So he's right there. But everything I've learned has just been sort of homemade, and thanks to the coaching of Miss Diana and Tony, I've been a very eager student to branch out into something that was totally new to me. I spent over 30 years writing for print, and it was a straitjacket. And you would write stories and say there was a paragraph there, and you'd say, boy, that's a sweet paragraph. It will never see the light of day. And sure enough, the next day it wasn't in the paper. And that's why newspapers are in so much trouble now, is because they've gone through and routinized everything during their monopoly days. And I was describing it to the editor the other day that newspapers were sort of like a pharmacy counter for a long time, and everybody went up every morning and got their daily dose of news medicine, and that was what we decided they were going to have, and they went away. And now there's all kinds of generics out there, and people don't want to necessarily take our medicine. They want to figure it out for themselves. And so that's sort of scary for print people. Frankly, I found it really kind of exciting, and I couldn't wait to get into it. And I ended up, my son said, you be careful now, because you're going to, this is endless, you know, you'll never stop. And my normal work day is I usually start about noon. I have, Don is in Washington, that was blogging in the morning, late morning Eastern time, and we try to make it 24 hours a day. Try to make it, my proposal was, after reading literally thousands of blogs and so on, as you know, in politics, they're usually in the tank for one side or the other. And I don't know about you, but I don't like to have things crammed down my throat. So I thought, gee, what if there was a place to go? Why did I like going online? And if you distilled everything down about why I like going online, it was because I didn't know what I was going to find. It was the serendipity. It was beachcombing. And I thought, what if there was a politics blog that you knew was well-informed and was going to be writing about you don't know what, and you wouldn't know what they were going to be saying about you know what either. It wouldn't be like Daily Kos or Hot Air or one of those others that you could predict in advance what they'd be saying. So the editors bought off on that, and Don and I started, and I'm sort of the one with a little attitude and try to push the envelopes a little bit. And we have our talents sort of mesh. I think they don't really overlap. And I want, if we're writing about something that everybody else is writing about, I want it to be different than everybody else writes about. So I sort of imagine a Google News page and figure out how to make my items stick out. For instance, last fall when Hillary Clinton was in Wisconsin talking to a group of hunters, everybody did headlines about Hillary Clinton going for the NRA vote. And our headline said, Hillary Clinton shot a duck once. And then when Barack Obama forgot how many states he'd been in, the headline said, Barack Obama wants to be president of all these 57 states. And this morning, there was a little email that I got last night about, please would I give $10 to Barack Obama? And I thought, you know, we put up an item about him having gotten $605 million so far. And so I just sort of wrote a snotty little item about with $605 million in hand, Barack Obama would really like $10 more from each one of us. And that got picked up. But to me, blogging, you know, I don't know, how many people here have been to Montana? Yeah, okay, well, you go out, I used to live there, and if you go out at night, unlike, say, anywhere in Southern California, and you look up, I used to have a summer place there, and before I went to bed every night, I would go out in the hammock, and I would look up, and all around the house were trees that were seedlings when Teddy Roosevelt was president. And I would look up at those stars, and there were so many stars, you didn't need a flashlight. I mean, you look up around here, and you go, wow, 14 stars. and 8 of them are on their way to LAX. And that's why I live a considerable ways out of the city on the way to Bakersfield. But, excuse me. And there was some great comfort that I drew, and I picture that every night just before I go to sleep. I have a little ritual that I go through. Because it was so exciting to think that there were so many other places. And yet it was so, it drove me into a proper perspective about how important I was and how important this big important planet was. So I spent that time sort of reminding myself about how much is out there. And I have the same approach about blogging. I started out talking about 10 Commandments. That's what I was looking for because I didn't know what I was doing. And I still don't know what I'm doing. But I know that there's thousands and thousands of commandments as far as blogging is concerned. And it's very exciting every day to learn another one or two of them. And then to try to play with them and go to work and look inside the machine. And 20 minutes later you can see the numbers start to work with this kind of a headline or that kind of a headline or whatever. So it's the same sort of Montana sky approach to blogging that I try to do.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Yes.
Who are you going to vote for?
Nobody will know that.
Other questions?
Well, I do get some comments, especially from, I sometimes go into the comments and comment back, especially at the beginning. We got too many of them to do that, but especially at the beginning, I would comment back and we had little dialogues, and especially with the Ron Paul people. They say, oh, come on, Andrew, we can tell you're coming over to our side. And I said, well, then watch the next item. And the next item I call it, they hated to hear it, was a long shot campaign. And I would say, long shot campaign. And I would put it, see, I told you. And then they would get all angry and they would come back in again. And one day, this past winter, I got an email from Peter, who was a Ron Paul supporter, and he said, so I see your editor got fired. And it seems to be a regular occurrence around here. And I see your editor got fired, but listen, we love the blog so much, so if the new guy comes in and gives you any shit, let me know, because I'll bring a couple of hundred of the Paul boys down and we'll demonstrate for the blog.